Our guest right now is Keith Jenkins, who covered all of Ridder's games for the Cincinnati Enquirer, and he's with us here on 93.7 The Fan. Keith, you were at the Pro Day. What has Desmond Ridder done since the end of that great season to put himself in the conversation to get drafted 20th overall?
Yeah, I mean, first I think he did really well in Indy at the Combine. You know, he's a guy that when you sit down and talk with him, you're going to love him. He's genuine. He's a leader. He has all the intangibles that you're looking for a guy that's going to lead your program. But then he threw well, and I think that was important, obviously, at Indy. And then he had a good pro day. But I think the best thing about Dez, and when you're evaluating his game, you just got to turn on the film. And when you break him down from his freshman year to the year that they just had here, he improved every single year. He improved with his vision. He improved with his accuracy. He was consistent with his accuracy this season. If you just, judge him from the Cotton Bowl against Alabama, he's a fourth-round pick, right? But if you break down his film and look at his growth and what he was able to do game after game and leading that team, not just last year, but the year before, the year before that, the year before that, this constant growth from Cincinnati year after year, he was the common denominator of all of that. So I think, it's just teams looking at the film, breaking him down, and seeing, hey, man, there's something here.
Keith, I feel like when I've read, and I've tried to read up on Desmond a lot, but when I have tried to read scouting reports of what he is and is not good at, I feel like I'm going insane. Because one I'll read says his footwork is actually quite good, and the other I'll read is his footwork is really inconsistent and leads to the inaccuracy, which is the biggest negative I hear consistently brought up about him. Can you please, I'm begging you, can you set the footwork thing straight? Is it good? Is it bad? What does he think of his own footwork? Help me, man.
Yeah, the footwork can be improved. If I'm looking at Desmond Ridder and I'm trying to figure out, hey man, should I really bring him into my team? Should I waste a draft pick on this kid? It's not that much of a concern. I think the big thing with him is he's a great athlete, and I think that for every great athlete is when that first read isn't there, that second read isn't there, you want to just go. You want to hightail it out of there and get positive yardage. And I think he's trying to train himself mentally as things are happening to sit still, stay in the pocket, and get through those progressions. That's something that we saw a lot from Dez this season. We didn't see that 2 seasons ago, 3 seasons ago. If it wasn't there, he'd just take off. But I think the footwork is just really him mentally progressing through things and going, okay, 1's not there, 2's there, 3, check down, 4, are you there? So it's just him really going through his progressions and figuring that out and really just continuing to grow and learn as a passer.
Our guest is a Desmond Ridder expert from watching all of his games at Cincinnati, where the Bearcats went undefeated. Keith Jenkins from the Cincinnati Enquirer on 93.7 The Fan. Keith, is there an NFL quarterback that he kind of reminds you of?
I don't want people to go crazy, but it is Pat Mahomes. And I want to, reel it back a little bit there, but I bring that comparison up because he's a really good athlete, and he has a strong arm, a big arm. He can throw it 80 yards. He can throw it 70 yards on a dime. Now, the consistency and the accuracy of that throw is what's been the concern throughout his career. I think he started to answer those questions his senior year and during these pro days and these indie workouts. But Pat Mahomes is probably the guy that I fathom him the most, just being an athlete, being a guy who has a big arm, being a guy, too. If you look at Pat Mahomes, he wasn't ready-made coming out of college, right? He had to sit behind and learn and figure out that system at Kansas City. I think Dez is kind of one of those guys, too. If you're expecting him to be, a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback day one, you're not going to get that. But if someone drafts him where he can learn and grow and figure things out for a year or two, I think ultimately he'll develop into, that top-tier quarterback that you want, just like Patrick Mahomes did.
Keith, is he the kind of guy, Ridder, where we hear this all the time about like quarterbacks? It's usually guys that end up failing. Sometimes people say it about guys who succeeded. When you play that what-if game, if he was drafted by one of the dregs of the NFL, it would have ended differently. Like if Tom Brady had been drafted by the Bengals way back when, he wouldn't be Tom Brady. Is Desmond Ridder a guy who you think like the intangibles and the total package of skills makes him immune to that wherever he goes, as long as he's not asked to play right away, he's going to succeed? or is he somebody that would really benefit from being in the right situation with a stable franchise more than other guys would?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously a stable franchise would benefit him, but I think what helps Dez, just to answer your question, is he's a blue-collar guy. He's a guy that is going to figure it out, that wants to figure it out. You know, a little bit about Dez, like his mom had him when she was 15, and now he has a child. So he's been through a lot and has learned a lot and has a lot to play for. But he's a guy that's so driven to improve and get better. It's why he went from being, you know, a great athlete who just happens to play quarterback to a quarterback who is a great athlete. So I think, given the intangibles, yes, he's a leader, he's a winner, he's a positive guy, great outlook. Those things will benefit him at the next level. Yeah, I'd like to see a great offensive line in front of him. You know, Cincinnati didn't have a great offensive line. That's why he didn't play well against Alabama, and that's why Cincinnati has a new offensive line coach. But, you know, I think, a great system would help him, but also I believe that he's one of those guys that, look, if he's thrown into a system where it's a little rocky, offensive line shaky, he doesn't have a great running back, the skilled players around him is not great, he's a guy that will figure it out, that will stay positive, that will figure out, okay, how can we make the most out of this situation? He's one of those guys who's grounded, too. He doesn't get too high or get too low, and I think that's been probably one of his biggest strengths throughout his career.
Keith Jenkins, a guy that knows Desmond Ridder better than we do, at his pro day, covered every one of his games at Cincinnati last year, a guy that is now being mocked to the Steelers a ton as we get closer to the draft. Keith, thank you so much. We appreciate it, man.
My pleasure.
There you go.